Hello, folks. We are going to do a quick overview of some of the old hardware that has been around. Computing got its start with these things. These are called punch cards, and it's a little hard to see. And what we're doing is that as you use these punch cards, there was a machine called a holograph reader, or the equipment in the key punch machine would actually do that. Now this one somebody had fun with. That's just an anteater here. But computing, this was still used up into the 60s and into the 90s, where they were using these to clear checks. So your grandparents or parents might remember a saying that said, do not fold, spindle, or mutilate. I am human. What that means is that your government checks used to come in on something that looked like this, and you would cash it. And that's why it said across the bottom of the check, do not fold, spindle, mutilate, because the readers wouldn't read it. Now, as we move on into the world of technology, what I want to show you is this. This is a blob of silicone. And this is precisely all that, I'm going to shine a line on it so it comes in a little better, that's how your chips are made. It's just raw silicone, and they melt it down, and then they slice off chunks. So what they do is they slice off these chunks, and then they etch them into the magic that you see here. This is a wafer. This is an 8-inch wafer. And each one of those little squares is an actual CPU chip. Now, in this case, those are an AMD K5 old school 100 megahertz. And this was in 1996. Now, if you look at 96 compared to where we are now, it's quite a difference. And it says, you can barely see it down here on the bottom, but it says Windows 95. Now, I'm going to bring a ruler here to give you an idea of how big this chip is. And the form factor of these chips hasn't changed much. They stay about this size. They get a little bigger, a little smaller. But what has made things so amazing in this world of technology is the miniaturization. Now, what I'm showing you here, trying to zoom in on, is an actual individual single solitary transistor. That single transistor is what started the magic of computing, and it began to shrink things down and make things so much smaller. Now, you have in your cell phone over 9 million or maybe billion of these little transistors. And it's crazy. This is why we have so much crazy computing power. So that's the CPUs. And a question for you is, how many transistors does this old AMD K5 have versus how many transistors for a modern chip that we currently have? Now, the next thing I want to show you is floppy drives. Now, floppies, there's an 8-inch floppy. This is one I got started in the 80s. 8-inch floppies is what you were using to be able to move things from computer to computer. And it was quite the undertaking. And you can see they're about 8 inches across. Then there was an upgrade. Then we got the 5¼ inch floppies. Your grandparents might have some of this thing running around, or your parents. And then we got an upgrade to a 3½ inch floppy, which caused a lot of tech problems because, hey, it's not floppy. They said it's a hard disk. No, this is an actual floppy, because inside, it's actual floppy drive inside of it. And this is what happens when you leave your floppy drive on the dashboard in the Central Valley of California. Here is a floppy drive reader, and the way this works is you put in your drive, and then there's a lever that pushes down, and then this actually touches that magnetic material, and it reads the magnetic flux off of that material. Okay, so that's floppies and CPUs.